The new Cold War has been brewing for years now. Tensions between Eastern powers of Russia and China and the Western alliance of NATO has reached an all-time high since the collapse of the Soviet Union. In Europe, Russian forces continue their offensive in Ukraine over 500 days since the initial invasion. NATO continues to fight in this proxy war by supplying bilateral aid in the form of financial, intelligence, weapons and humanitarian packages worth a combined total of $157 billion. Of this figure, the US has directed more than $75 billion, or close to half of all of that aid, all in the name of US hegemony. As one of the consequences of this war, sanctions placed on Russia have led to crazy volatility, making life difficult for everyone. These commodity price hikes have made it clear that the global supply chain is not as stable as once thought. The West is in dire need for a stable and affordable supply chain, it being paramount to show their dominance over the world and to prevent millions from dying from famine in the event of a prolonged global conflict. And down in the southern hemisphere, China, an ally to Russia and enemy to the West, holds much of its soft power in its production of exports to the rest of the world. China is the world's biggest exporter of broadcasting equipment, computers, office machine parts, phones and countless other products. But their main countries they export to are the West as well, so it isn't clear cut where China will go next, but what is clear is the West dependency on the East. In the event of a shutdown to the global economy, many of these countries, including the United States, would have their abilities to create new technologies and military equipment jeopardized, spelling disaster for those within NATO. The West are well aware of these issues and are actively looking for solutions, things like protecting Taiwan. If Taiwan were to be invaded, their ability to produce semiconductors would be completely wiped out, meaning the US would have full dependency on China, which is terrifying to America. In a statement from early last year, the Commerce Secretary dubbed the semiconductor shortage a national security issue, and since then, the US government has injected billions of dollars into their domestic semiconductor manufacturing industry. Now, with all this government funding going into domestic manufacturing industries where the US has dependency issues, there is an opportunity for us to make money, something we'll go into more detail on later in the video. But first, let's talk about why all of this is necessary. Are relations really so bad that having this dependency is a legitimate national security risk? US-China relations first began to fall apart under the Trump administration in 2017 following a US Trade Representative probe on China. This probe ended a year later with the report conducting that China was in fact conducting unfair trade practices, and that same day, Trump announced tariffs on $110 billion worth of Chinese trade. These tariffs were followed by, guess what? More tariffs, including a 10% tariff on approximately $300 billion worth of additional Chinese goods. Of course, China, a country filled with national pride, was not afraid to retaliate, and they fired tariffs right back. The total of their tariffs affected more than $106 billion worth of US goods. Now, you might think that once the Trump administration left office, the Biden administration might de-escalate the situation, but you'd be dead wrong. Those tariffs still remain in place under the Biden administration, and are accounting for $71 billion of the $74 billion in tariff revenues for America. In fact, since Trump left office, relations between China and the West have gotten significantly worse, especially after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. The purpose of her trip was supposedly to show the world the success of the people of Taiwan, the courage to change their own country and to become more democratic, although the real reason was to deepen Taiwanese and US relations. This predictably drew fury from China, with government officials such as Wang Yi, the foreign minister, stating that US politicians were playing with fire and that the visit was very dangerous and stupid. This was widely supported by Chinese state media outlets, who called for any US military aircraft flying to Taiwan to be shot down, an act of war which signals to us the war might be much closer than we think. After all, US involvement with Taiwan undermines China's 2049 plans of national rejuvenation, a vision referring to the idea of the revival of China's prosperity, national power and international standing. Xi Jinping, the president of the PRC himself, has even stated that resolving the Taiwan question and realizing China's complete reunification is, for the party, a historic mission and an unshakable commitment. It's also a natural requirement for realizing the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. With the date of 2049 marking the 100-year anniversary of the People's Republic of China, the date in which a forceful Taiwan invasion will occur is imminent. Since the US has plans for military action if this were the case, they will strike whilst the US remains dependent on Taiwan for semiconductors. Why? Because US forces will be immensely weakened if production of almost 60% of the global semiconductor industry that Taiwan holds ceases to function, leaving China with immense power as the sole mass producer. And this visit to Taiwan came just months before the infamous Chinese balloon incidents that took place earlier this year. The US government claimed the balloon carried 2 railroad cars equipment of spy equipment after the US Air Force shot down the balloon over US territorial waters near the coast of South Carolina. The balloon, owned by the Chinese state, had been spotted traveling through North American airspace over areas including Alaska, Western Canada, and the United States as a whole. But the Chinese beg to differ, firmly opposing the claims of China's foreign ministry spokesman, calling the remarks extremely absurd and irresponsible. Following this incident, the Taiwanese military announced their new policy to track any movements of high-altitude balloons from mainland China and shoot down and destroy mainland Chinese balloons if they pose a risk. It is incredibly likely that the influence of the US on Taiwanese military policy would have invigorated a similar reaction within the CCP, making relations fall to a point which currently seems irreparable. Things appear to be getting worse and worse, and this Cold War might spin out of control at any moment into something more than just a series of proxy wars which are going on now. And guess what? Semiconductors aren't the only industry which is integral to US military dominance. Rare earth elements are components of many devices which we use daily in our modern society, including in the screens of smartphones, computers, farm equipment, and cars. These are items which are essential in all of our lives. They are vital to both sides of the Cold War. Like semiconductors, they're used not only to produce consumer products for greater economic well-being, but also for the production and manufacturing of advanced weapon systems and military infrastructure. To make an F-35 fighter jet, you need 920 pounds of rare earth metals. For a guided missile destroyer, 5,200 pounds, and for a Virginia-class nuclear submarine, 9,200 pounds. Not only are rare earth elements key in creating current military technology, but they are also extensively used for research of new technologies as well. Essentially, without these rare resources, the US would struggle to replace destroyed equipment or introduce new technologies to defend the West. And guess who completely dominates the production of these rare elements? Well, it's China, of course. In recent decades, they have become the source of 90 to 95% of the world's rare earth oxides and the producer of a majority of the globe's strongest rare earth magnets, spelling bad news for the US given the downturn in relations. It's a very real concern. We use them for important technologies to keep us all safe, said the CIA's director. Now, many US officials and lawmakers are viewing this situation as an urgent issue. They are pushing for solutions that range from stockpiling critical minerals. Goldman Sachs is even going so far as to say that the West needs over $25 billion worth of investments in rare earth metals to match China's supply of rare earths, which is where we come in with a new opportunity to invest our money and potentially make huge returns in this macroeconomical political climate. Introducing this video's sponsor, Defense Metals Corp. With a competent executive team holding years of mineral exploration, development, industry expertise, and an experienced technical team working with industry-leading partners, SGS, SRK Consulting, and Apex Geoscience Limited. They're even working with Hatch, a global alliance of more than 10,000 professionals dedicated to finding solutions, and in this sense, that focus is distinctly on rare earth metals. Defense Metals is focused on the development of its 100% owned Wichita project in British Columbia to deliver critical metals commonly used in the defense and national security industries and in the production of green energy technology. The Wichita project property consists of 9 mineral claims covering an area of 6,759 hectares. It's located roughly 80 kilometers northeast of the city of Prince George, British Columbia, Canada, and is accessible by all-weather gravel roads with proximity to power structure and a major deep-sea port. This area has a measured mineral resource of 6.4 million tons, averaging 2.86% total rare earth oxide, and an indicated mineral resource of 27.8 million tons, averaging 1.84% total rare earth oxide. Considering the measured mineral resource of 6.4 million tons and indicated indicated mineral resource of 27.8 million tons, they have considerable room to grow past the 140,000 tons which China produces. This could be America's ticket to true resource independence and security when it comes to these vital metals. This makes it a prime target for investments from the government and investors alike. As for analyst predictions on the future performance of their shares, everything also looks to be green. Analysts offering 12-month price targets for DFMTF in the last 3 months have been giving consensus of an average price target of 70 cents a share, with a high estimate of over 80 cents a share and a low estimate of 60, far above the 0.14 current trading price as of September 29. If we see the share price rise to where analysts expect it to, we could be looking at a more than 400% return here, and year to date the stock has climbed by just under 19% from 1 year ago today. Overall, Defense Metals looks to be a very sound company, looking to help assist the US and NATO fix their national security issues and generate shareholder value at the same time. If you're looking to invest into this area, you definitely need to take a look at Defense Metals Corp. Obviously, none of this is investment advice. I'm not a financial advisor by any means, and you need to do your own due diligence, but it is my pick for the sector right now.